Dead, Not Down Bad by Soaring Bubblegum, a Batman and Red Hood and the Outlaws fanfic, rated for teen and up audiences. With additional tags for asexual Jason Todd, asexual character, LGBTQ themes, family dynamics, Batfamily shenanigans, fluff and humor, coming out, self-discovery, sexuality crisis, supportive Batfamily, Jason Todd is so done, awkward conversations, no romance, platonic relationships, family bonding, sounds fake but okay, and Jason Todd-centric. Summary. The Batfamily has theories about why Jason Todd has never dated anyone. Lazarus Pit trauma, trust issues, secret vampire status, etc. In which Jason Todd discovers he's asexual, his family stages the world's most awkward intervention, and everyone learns that sometimes the real treasure is the emotional growth we made along the way. Also, Jason has been immune to poison ivy this whole time, and no one thought to mention it. The first time Dick noticed, Jason was elbow deep in a motorcycle engine, cursing creatively at the carburetor that refused to cooperate. It was a Tuesday, which meant mandatory family dinner at the manor. A tradition Alfred had reinstated with the iron fist of a man who'd raised 6 vigilantes and lived to tell about it. "Jay, you coming up for dinner?" Dick called from the garage doorway. Yeah, just give me 5. Jason muttered, not looking up from his work. Dick lingered, watching his brother's focused concentration. At 23, Jason had grown into his frame, broad shoulders, calloused hands, and the kind of presence that made people step aside on Gotham's streets. He was handsome, in that rugged, dangerous way that usually had people lining up. So why had Dick never seen him with anyone? "Hey, random question," Dick said, leaning against the doorframe. "You seeing anyone these days?" Jason's wrench slipped, and he swore as his knuckles scraped against the metal. "What kind of question is that?" The question hit something uncomfortable in his chest. Not quite shame, but close. Like when teachers used to ask about his parents at school, or when other kids talked about things he couldn't relate to. That familiar feeling of being on the outside of some joke everyone else was in on. "A normal one? We're brothers. I'm interested in your life." "My life is fine, thanks." Jason wiped his hands on a rag, pointedly not meeting Dick's eyes. The grease stains suddenly seemed very important to focus on. "Can we eat now? I'm starving." Dick let it slide, but the question stuck. The second time was Tim's fault. It was a slow patrol night, the kind where Gotham's criminals apparently decided to take a collective sick day. Tim found himself on a roof, with Jason, both of them watching the quiet streets below. "You know," Tim said, because he'd never met a comfortable silence he couldn't fill with awkward conversation. "I broke up with Bernard last week." Jason grunted, which was basically the equivalent of a Hallmark sympathy card in Jason speak. "It's whatever," Tim continued. "We weren't really compatible anyway. Different life goals, you know. He wants someone who will be home for dinner more than twice a month." "Reasonable," Jason said. "What about you? Anyone special giving you grief about the whole mysterious vigilante thing?" Jason turned to look at him, one eyebrow raised. There it is again, the weird disconnect. Like Tim was speaking a foreign language that Jason was supposed to understand, but didn't. "Anyone special? You know, dating, romance, the mortifying ordeal of being known by another person." The quote made Jason's lip twitch, despite himself, but underneath the amusement was the same nagging feeling, like he was missing something obvious, like there was a test everyone else had studied for, and he'd never known it was happening. "I think you've been reading too much poetry, replacement." Tim waited. Jason said nothing else. "So, no one, then?" "Nope." "Like, no one recently, or no one ever?" Jason's other eyebrow joined the first. "You writing a book?" "I'm just curious. You're 23, you're..." Tim gestured vaguely at Jason's general existence. "You know, objectively attractive. You've got that whole mysterious bad boy thing going on. People are into that. People are into a lot of weird shit," Jason said flatly. "Doesn't mean I gotta participate." And that was the end of that conversation. But Tim had a feeling there was more to it. By the time Stephanie overheard Duke asking Damien if he thought Jason was emotionally unavailable due to trauma, the speculation had reached critical mass. "Okay, what are we talking about?" Steph demanded, sliding into the booth at the diner where they all met for post-patrol breakfast. "Todd's mysterious celibacy," Damien said primly, cutting his waffle into precise geometric shapes. "His what now?" "None of us have ever seen him with anyone," Duke explained. "Like, ever. And when we ask about it, he gets all weird and deflects." Steph considers this. "Huh. You know, now that you mention it, I don't think I've ever seen him check someone out. And we've been to some pretty party-heavy galas." "Right," Tim said, looking vindicated. "It's like he's completely disinterested in everyone." "Maybe he's just private," Dick offered weakly. He'd been nursing the same cup of coffee for 20 minutes, looking increasingly concerned. "Some people don't like to kiss and tell. There's private and there's acting like romance is a foreign concept," Steph pointed out. "Remember when that girl at a charity auction was literally throwing herself at him? Red dress, kept touching his arm, gave him her number? He used it as a bookmark," Tim said solemnly. "A bookmark?" "For Crime and Punishment." They all sat in contemplative silence. "Perhaps," Damien said slowly. "His time in the League of Assassins has left him incapable of forming intimate connections." "Or maybe dying really young messed with his emotional development," Duke suggested. "Vampire?" "Tim, no." "Could be trust issues," Dick added. "After everything he's been through." Steph snapped her fingers. "Oh, or maybe he's carrying a torch for someone he lost, like a tragic first love who died in a car accident or something." "He was 15 when he died," Tim pointed out. "How tragic could his love life have been?" "Romeo and Juliet were teenagers," Steph shot back. "Yeah, and look how that worked out." "Guys," Dick interrupted, "maybe we're overthinking this. Maybe he's just focused on other things right now." But even as he said it, Dick didn't sound convinced. The intervention was Steph's idea, planned with military precision and executed with all the subtlety of a brick through a window. They cornered Jason in the cave after patrol, forming a loose semicircle around his motorcycle like the world's most dysfunctional support group. Jason said, looking around at their serious faces. "Did someone die? Again?" "Jason," Dick began, in the gentle tone he usually reserved for talking jumpers off ledges. "We need to talk." "About?" "Your emotional well-being." Jason stared at him. "My what now?" "We're worried about you," Steph chimed in. "Specifically about your romantic situation." "My romantic... What the hell is this? An after-school special?" "When is the last time you went on a date?" Tim asked bluntly. Jason blinked. "A date?" "Yes, you know, dinner, movies, awkward small talk, maybe some light groping in a dark corner." "Tim!" Dick hissed. "What? I'm being realistic." Jason looked around the group again, his expression shifting from confusion to dawning horror. The walls of the cave suddenly felt too close, too many eyes on him, too many expectations he'd never asked for. His chest tightened with something that felt dangerously close to panic. "Oh my god, you people are serious." "We're concerned," Duke said diplomatically. "You're 23. You're, reasonably attractive. Thanks for the ringing endorsement. And you've never mentioned being interested in anyone. Ever." So, Steph said. "It's weird. People our age are supposed to be horny disasters making terrible life choices in the name of getting laid." "Speak for yourself." "I am! We all are! Do you know how many bad decisions I've made because someone was hot?" "I do not want to know that number." "It's 17. She said anyway. Jason looked like he was questioning every life choice that had led him to this moment. "Can I just go upstairs and pretend this conversation never happened?" "Not until you talk to us," Dick said firmly. "Jason, there's nothing wrong with being single, or with taking time to heal from trauma, or even with having trust issues after everything you've been through. But completely avoiding romantic connection isn't healthy." "Who says I'm avoiding anything?" The fact that you've never shown interest in a single person since you've been back, Tim said. And I mean anyone. Male, female, non-binary, doesn't matter. You treat romance like it's a foreign language. Jason was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working like he was chewing over something particularly difficult. The weight of their stares was making his skin crawl, but underneath the discomfort was something else. A tiny spark of hope that maybe, finally, someone would explain what was wrong with him. "Do you want to know the truth?" he said finally. They all nodded eagerly. "You people actually look at other people and think, 'Yeah, I'd hit that.'" The silence stretched out like taffy. "Like, regularly," Jason continued, looking genuinely baffled. "You just see an attractive person and automatically want to have sex with them." "Yes?" Steph said slowly. "That's..." Jason paused, running a hand through his hair. "That's a thing that actually happens. Like, it's not just a joke." "Jason," Dick said carefully, "what did you think sexual attraction was?" "I don't know. Like, something that happens in movies? Or after you've been dating someone for a really long time and you run out of other things to talk about." The silence was deafening. "Oh," Tim said quietly. "Oh, you're... I'm what?" "You're asexual." Jason frowned. "I'm what now?" "Asexual," Duke repeated. "It means you don't experience sexual attraction." "That's... a thing?" "It's a whole thing," Steph said, pulling out her phone. "There's flags and everything. Look." She showed him a picture of the asexual flag, and Jason stared at it like it held the secrets to the universe. Something in his chest loosened. A knot he hadn't even realized was there. Purple, white, gray, black. Simple. Clean. Real. "So you're telling me," he said slowly, his voice quieter now, more thoughtful, "that all this time, when you guys have been talking about people being hot, you weren't just, I don't know, speaking metaphorically?" "Jason," Dick said gently, "when I say someone is attractive, I mean I'm genuinely attracted to them. Like, physically. I want to touch them and kiss them and potentially do other things with them. Just by looking at them. Sometimes, yeah?" Jason stared at him for a long moment. "Sounds fake, but okay." "It's not fake," Steph protested. "It's literally how most people work." "Most people," Jason repeated slowly, "walk around wanting to have sex with other people they see." "Yes." "Regularly." "Yes." "And this is normal?" "Very normal." Jason sat down heavily on his motorcycle, the revelation hitting him like a physical weight. All those years of feeling like he was pretending to be human, like everyone else had gotten an instruction manual he'd never received. All those times he'd wondered what was fundamentally broken inside him. Well, shit. "So, let me get this straight," Jason said, 20 minutes later, after they'd moved the conversation upstairs to the kitchen, where Alfred had wordlessly provided cookies and tea. "You people just walk around being attracted to random strangers." "Not random," Tim protested. "There's usually some kind of spark, compatibility, shared interests. But also sometimes random," Steph admitted. "Like sometimes when you see someone at a grocery store and think, 'Damn, I would climb that man like a tree.'" Jason choked on his tea. "That's a thing normal people think?" "You've never thought that?" "I've never wanted to climb anyone like anything." Damien, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during this whole exchange, finally spoke. "This explains a great deal about your fighting style." Everyone turned to look at him. "You have never been distracted by an opponent's appearance," he continued, matter-of-factly. "I always wondered why you seemed immune to Poison Ivy's pheromones." "Wait," Dick said. "Is that why you were the only one who could get close enough to stop her last month?" Jason shrugged. "I figured you guys were all just being dramatic about the whole mind control thing." "Jason," Tim said seriously, "she makes people want to have sex with her so bad they'll do whatever she says. That's literally her whole thing." "Huh." Jason considered this. "That's Actually really fucked up when you put it like that. Most of us have built up a tolerance over the years, Duke said. But you were just completely unaffected. Because I don't want to have sex with anyone. Jason said, like he was testing out the words. Because I'm asexual. How do you feel about that? Dick asked gently. Jason was quiet for a moment, absent-mindedly petting one of Alfred's cats that had wandered into the kitchen. The simple, repetitive motion helped center him, helped him sort through the tangle of relief and confusion, and something that might have been grief for all the years he had spent thinking he was wrong somehow. Honestly, kinda relieved. Relieved? I mean, I always figured I was just broken, you know? Die at 15, come back wrong. Maybe the Lazarus Pit fried whatever part of my brain was supposed to be interested in that stuff. He paused, his voice getting softer, more vulnerable than his family had heard it in years. It's nice to know it's just a thing, a normal thing that some people are. Very normal, Steph confirmed. There's a whole community, websites, forums, support groups. Please don't sign me up for any support groups. I'm just saying, you're not alone in this. Jason smiled, a real smile, not one of his sarcastic smirks. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt like he fit in his own skin. Thanks, that's actually really nice to hear. So, Tim said, no tragic backstory? No lost love? No emotional trauma preventing you from opening up your heart? Nope, just a complete lack of interest in getting naked with people. But you still want relationships, right? Dick asked. Like, romantic relationships without the sexual component. Jason tilted his head, considering. I don't know. Maybe. I've never really thought about it. There's a term for that, too. Duke said, helpfully. Aromantic. Some people are asexual but still want romantic relationships. Some people are aromantic but still want sexual relationships. And some people are both. Jesus, there's a lot of terminology. The community likes to be specific, Steph said. Helps people figure out exactly where they fit. And where do I fit? That's for you to figure out, Dick said. No rush. Jason nodded slowly. Yeah, I can work with that. The next few weeks were educational. Tim, who had apparently appointed himself Jason's personal guide to LGBTQ plus terminology, kept sending him articles and links to forums. Most of them Jason ignored, but some were actually pretty helpful. Steph had printed out a list of different types of attraction. Platonic, aesthetic, romantic, sensual. It's like a whole spectrum, Jay. And stuck it to his bathroom mirror. Jason had left it there. Duke had offhandedly mentioned that one of his college friends was ace, and if Jason ever wanted to talk to someone who wasn't his weird vigilante family, he could make an introduction. Jason had filed that away for later. Even Damien had contributed, in his own way, by pointedly not treating Jason any differently, which was, honestly, exactly what Jason had needed. But it was Dick who had surprised him the most. You know, Dick said one evening, as they sat on the manor's front steps watching the sunset, I owe you an apology. For what? For assuming there was something wrong with you. For thinking you needed to be fixed. Jason bumped his shoulder against Dick's. You were worried about me. That's not a bad thing. But I was worried about the wrong things, like thinking you were lonely or scared or broken. It never occurred to me that you might just be content. Are you content? Dick asked. With how things are? Jason thought about it. He had his books, his motorcycle, his guns, his weird, dysfunctional family. He had Alfred's cookies and Tim's terrible coffee, and Damien's reluctant respect. He had a purpose, people who cared about him, and a place in the world that actually made sense. Yeah, he said finally. I think I am. Good, Dick said. That's all I wanted. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky fade from orange to purple. Although, Jason said eventually, if you guys ever stage another intervention, I'm shooting all of you. Noted, Dick said solemnly. Non-fatal, Jason clarified. I appreciate the restraint. I'm very mature now. You put salt in Tim's coffee this morning. That was justice. He used my favorite mug. Dick grinned. Some things never change. Thank God for that. Epilogue. The first time someone asked Jason if he was dating anyone after the revelation, he didn't freeze up or deflect or change the subject. Nah, he said, not looking up from the engine he was working on. Not really my thing. Oh, the person, one of Tim's friends from college, said, Are you, getting over a bad breakup or something? Nope, just asexual. Oh, cool. My cousin's ace too. And that was it. No big deal, no awkward explanations, no weird looks, just acceptance and a continuation of the conversation about motorcycle maintenance. Later, when Jason mentioned it to the family, Steph whooped loud enough to wake the dead. Look at you being all comfortable with yourself and shit. Language, Stephanie. Alfred chided, but he was smiling. I'm proud of you, Dick said simply, and Jason felt something warm settle in his chest. It's not like I climbed Everest, Jason protested. I just answered a question honestly. That's harder than it sounds, Tim said. Trust me. Speaking of, Steph said, waggling her eyebrows. I met this really cool girl at Pride last week. She's ace. She's into motorcycles, and she has a terrible sense of humor. Want me to introduce you? Jason paused, wrenched halfway to his mouth, where he'd been about to hold it between his teeth. As friends. However you want it. No pressure. Jason considered this. He'd been thinking about what Dick had asked, whether he wanted romantic relationships. The answer was still a solid maybe, but he'd realized that there was something he definitely did want. More people in his life who got it. Who understood that there were different ways to connect with people, different ways to care about them. Yeah, he said finally. Okay, I'd like to meet her. Steph's grin could have powered half of Gotham. Excellent. Her name is Riley, and she once told me that people who rev their engines at red lights have small dick energy. I like her already, Jason said. I knew you would. And as Jason went back to work on his bike, surrounded by the comfortable chaos of his family's conversation, he reflected on how weird his life was. He'd died, come back wrong, spent years angry at the world, and somehow ended up here, in a place where he was known and accepted and loved exactly as he was. It wasn't the life he planned on when he was 15 and thought he had all the answers, but it was a good life, a life that fit him. And if that wasn't worth celebrating, he didn't know what was. Notes. This has been in my Google Docs forever. HJ makes me feel all soft and gooey inside. And yes, Jason Todd absolutely would use someone's phone number as a bookmark for Russian literature. This is canon in my heart. If you enjoyed this story, go down to the description below and follow the link to the author's original work. Leave them many comments and kudos. If you enjoyed this reading, you can subscribe, or go down to the comments below and tell me what else I should read. I'm partial to Yuri. Thank you for listening. I am! We all... Oh, I got too into it. I like to think Steph wears bracelets. Probably not in suit, though.